Chapter 6. The Double Attack. In this chapter, we're going to combine the ideas from the previous two chapters, the knight fork and the pin. And we're going to use both of those ideas in combination with another in order to produce a whole new weapon altogether. That weapon is called the double attack. The double attack, at its core, is about making two threats simultaneously. And in this first example, we will see exactly what that looks like. In this position, it's white to move, and we can identify a very, very nice move for white, and that move is queen to f5. From queen f5, we have two simultaneous threats. One is that this queen and bishop battery is threatening to take the pawn on h7 with check, and when the king moves, the queen will then be able to step up to h8, and that would be a checkmate. That's the first threat. And black really has to deal with that threat in some way, shape, or form. The second threat is the threat that the queen makes to capture the rook on c8. And black is unable to deal with both of these threats at the same time. Black plays knight to b2 in desperation. But white continues by capturing on h7 with check, forcing the king to f8, and then delivering mate on h8. In the next example, we will see a similar idea employed. In this example, the queen comes to d4, and from here there are two simultaneous threats. One is the queen-bishop battery threatening checkmate at g7, and the second simultaneous threat is that now this bishop on e4 is attacked twice, once by the knight and once by the queen, whereas previously it was only attacked by the knight. By playing queen d4, we've intensified the pressure on the bishop, and we've made a mate threat. The mate threat takes priority. Black has to prevent checkmate, therefore black plays f6, blunting this dark diagonal, but allowing us to take the bishop on e4. Now, after he takes back, we take the rook, he takes our bishop, and on sum, we've won an exchange because of the double attack. In this example, it is white to move, and this time we need to bring about circumstances through means of violent moves, after which we'll be able to land a double attack. Can you see how we're going to do this? The answer lies in the violent move, rook takes bishop. This essentially forces black's rook to recapture our own, but in doing so, that rook steps onto a square that allows us to attack it and also threaten checkmate at the same time. These are two threats that cannot be parried simultaneously. Black prevents checkmate by closing down the diagonal, but in so doing allows us to capture the rook. Again, the power of the double attack is evident in bringing about these winning positions. In this example, it's black's turn to move. Can you find a move for black which creates two simultaneous threats that cannot both be parried? The answer is queen to e7. This move carries two simultaneous threats, the first of which is to capture the rook on g5. The second threat is to provide checkmate on e1. Of course, white prioritizes the defense against checkmate and therefore plays h4, giving his king a square to run to in the case of queen e1 check. However, even after this is played, we can even play another double attack. Can you see the double attack here? The double attack here is queen takes h4 check, hitting the king, but also hitting the rook. Now the king has to move, and then we capture the rook. In this position, black makes a mistake. Black sees that the e4 pawn is only defended twice, and he has it attacked thrice. Therefore, he calculates that he can take the pawn, and after we recapture, he can take again, and after we recapture, he can take again. But what is it that black overlooked? How can we as white respond using the power of a double attack to turn our loss of a pawn into a massive gain? The answer is queen g5, threatening both checkmate at g7 and also threatening the rook at d8. Both of these threats cannot be parried at the same time. Black chooses to deal with the checkmate threat by moving the king closer to a freedom, but in so doing allows us to take the rook. Again, such is the power of the double attack. In this example, white has just captured a pawn using his knight and believes himself to be in a good position. But we've actually set a trap, and that trap relies on a double attack. How can we use a double attack here to win material? The answer is queen a5 check, hitting both the king and also the knight on e5. Now, the check takes priority and white has to block the check in some way, shape or form. They choose to play c3, and that allows us to swing across and regather the knight. Again, the power of the double attack is evident. In this example, we can see that we would have a double attack with our bishop on this particular square d4, attacking both the king and the rook, if only that square wasn't defended by the knight. It's that observation that leads us to the correct move, which is rook takes knight. Now, after he recaptures our rook, we can play this double attack, checking the king, and then when the king moves, we will pick up the rook on a7. In this position, it's white to move, and it's a similar idea again. Here, we would love to be able to play a double attack using our bishop to spear both the king and whichever piece is over here on b4. But we can't do that right now because the piece on d4 also happens to defend the c5 square. But it's from that observation that we realize we can play rook takes bishop, practically forcing the rook to recapture our rook, at which point we can play bishop c5 check, and when the king moves, we can regather the rook. We've won a lot of material, and we're in a winning position. Thanks again to the double attack. In this position, how can we play a violent move to bring about a double attack? Remember, violent moves are checks or captures, or threats of checks or threats of captures. In this case, the violent move is a3. It's a threat to capture the knight. Once the knight moves to what is its only safe square, a6, we can then play the double attacking move, queen a4 check, hitting the king, but also hitting the knight. And once the king moves, we take the knight, having won a lot of material. In this position, it's white to move. And again, we're going to be using the double attack weapon in order to win material. The way this one starts is with queen h8. This forces the king to g5. There's no other square to go to. From g5, there are a couple of ways for us to produce double attacks in this position. Can you see any of them? One of them is queen e5 check, hitting the king and also hitting the bishop behind it, so that after the king moves, we take the bishop and we're in a winning position. If we go back, the other move that would also work here would be queen to d8, with the same idea, hitting the king and also hitting the bishop, just from a different angle. In this position, it's white to move. And how can we use violence to bring about a double attack? Well, we can see in this position there is a certain amount of tension here on the a6 square. We're attacking that square a couple of times, and he's defending it a couple of times. However, we can bring an extra attacker to that square by using the queen to land on b5, giving a check to the king and therefore also attacking the a6 square. Now, we can't do that straight away because the bishop protects the b5 square. But what we can do is take that bishop. Really, we can do it with either the bishop or the rook, and Chernev and co. say to take with the bishop, which is perfectly fine because you're taking a whole bishop, and in all likelihood, the black side needs to take back, at which point you can take a knight. And when they take back, you can then provide the double attack move, checking the king and hitting the rook. When the king moves, the rook is yours. Stockfish prefers, however, to start the combination with the rook. This puts black's rook under immediate pressure and is just a little bit more violent in that sense, in terms of forcing this recapture. Then we can recapture the knight. And again, the ultimate position is the same. After the rook takes, we are going to land the same exact double attack. In this position, it's white to move. And the reason I've included this one is because Chernev and Reinfeld actually got this one wrong. They've shown this as a double attacking sequence that works in white's favor. It's actually not, but let's go through it because it is illustrative. The sequence starts, rook takes bishop. Now, we can't simply allow white to capture our bishop, but we also don't want to take with our queen, because then he's going to take our queen and we will have lost a queen, which we don't want to do. So says Chernev and Reinfeld. Therefore, they say, we have to take this one with our rook. After we do that, white captures our rook, and we have to recapture his rook. Now, in this position, they are quite correct. White has a double attacking move that wins a rook. Can you find that move? The move is queen g4, check, hitting our king and also hitting our rook. Once we move our king, he'll take our rook, and we're going to lose the rook and lose the game. So what is it that Chernev and Reinfeld missed when they wrote this book back in 1949? What they missed, and what I found only with the help of a modern chess computer, is that after the rook captures the bishop, we actually can regather this rook with our queen instead of the rook. We can take it with the queen. In so doing, we've won an exchange. We've won a rook for a bishop, so we're already doing well. And if white continues on to actually take our queen, now we can use our other rook to run down the c-file and give a check on c1. Now we see the point. This check has to be blocked, and then we capture that rook with another check, and after the knight recaptures us, we give one final check and mate. So in actual fact, Chernev and Reinfeld were incorrect in their particular analysis of this position. Now, assuming you take with a rook, then yes, the double attack here is the correct move. So it's good to look at from, say, this perspective. But it's also good to be aware that in actual fact, you can't always rely that just because you think you see a double attack doesn't mean it's always going to work. You might have an extenuating circumstance like that the defending team can actually give up their queen because it means they get a mating attack on the other side. We've run into that concept now in every one of these chapters. You always have to be very careful. In this example, it's white to move, and white has an ingenious move. The move here is g5, attacking the rook. Now, this rook doesn't have a lot of good squares to go to. So, he captures the pawn. Now, white captures the knight. And black thinks, why have you done that? I've got that knight defended twice. So he takes back, we take his rook, and he takes our rook. And now we see the point. There's a double attack. We play queen to c8 check. And after the king moves, we get to take the other rook as well. And we end up a lot of material in this position. In this position, it's white to move. Can you see a double attack in this position? The answer is rook f5. This attacks the bishop and also the knight. Once, say, the bishop saves itself, the rook slides over, and we've picked up a full knight. In this position, it is, again, white to move, and we want to use a violent move that's going to bring about the conditions for a double attack. Can you see such a move? The move is bishop takes bishop, practically forcing black to recapture. Now we can relocate our queen to d3. On d3, it attacks the rook, and it also attacks the knight. And we're going to end up winning one of those pieces. This is where Chernev and Reinfeld end their analysis. But looking deeper with a computer, we see that though they are correct, it's not very simple, because black can play the move bishop takes b2, winning a pawn and also threatening to win an exchange. Now here, white simply moves the rook to b1, where it now attacks the bishop. The bishop is attacked, the knight's attacked, the rook's attacked. It's a triple attack. And how does black best deal with this? Well, they move the bishop back to d4 with a check. This forces us to move the king, and that buys enough time for black to move the knight away on a kamikaze sacrifice to at least get a pawn for itself. Once it takes its pawn and we capture it and black captures our rook, we take their rook and we've ended up material. So it has worked out, and it all stemmed from the observation that after this violent move of bishop takes bishop, rook takes bishop, we would have the double attack from queen d3. These are the patterns that we want to really absorb into our minds and use in our own games. In this example, it's black to move. Can you see any way to use a violent move to bring about a double attack? The answer is bishop takes bishop, which practically forces the king to regather our bishop. But in so doing, the king leaves the g1 square unattended, and we can use that square with our queen, thereby attacking the knight and the bishop at the same time. White can only save one of those pieces, and we take the other one. In this position, it's black to move. Again, we're going to use a violent move to bring about the double attack. In particular, we're going to take the queen because we notice that after he takes back, which is essentially forced, we can do two different double attacks, one after the other. The first is bishop b4, attacking the rook, and yes, attacking the knight, although this knight is defended by the rook. So the more important factor here is that we're attacking the rook, and that rook now has to leave this second rank. It can't stay here because we would take it, and it can't stay here because we'll take it. And when he leaves that second rank, can you find the next move, which is the actual double attack of this position? Rook c2, attacking both bishops at the same time, and one of them is going to fall. In this position, it's black to move, and we can immediately see one way to produce a double attack. That way is d3, attacking both the queen and the knight. You might not have wanted to play this move, however, because you can see that the rook can capture this pawn, and it seems as though we've just given a pawn away for free. But if you keep calculating, you'll see that we can take that rook as well, practically forcing the queen to recapture. And now we can deliver another double attack. This one will not be able to be parried. e4, attacking the queen again and also attacking the knight. The queen can give a check if it wants, but that's no good. The knight is still attacked. In this position, it's white to move. And following the similar pattern from the last example, you probably already notice that d5 is an idea in this position. d5 would attack both the bishop and the knight. The only issue with d5 is that the bishop could immediately capture on d5. Let's see that. What can we do from here? Well, if you were paying attention to the last lesson on knight forks, you might already see the answer. Knight f5. A knight fork, which of course is a form of a double attack, attacking both the rook and the queen simultaneously. Once the queen moves, we're free to take the rook. In this example, it's black to move. Can you see a violent move that will bring about the conditions under which we can execute a double attack? The double attack is similar in form to the previous two examples. The violent move is a threat to capture the knight on d4. We play c5. That knight now jumps away to f3, but that allows us to then push the other pawn to d4, where it attacks both the bishop and the knight, and one of them will fall. In this position, it's black to move. Can you see violent moves that will result in a double attack? Similar to the previous few examples, the answer starts with c5, And once the knight moves, we push that pawn again, and we've now got a pawn attacking both the queen and the knight, supported by this knight. That's a beautiful double attack. In this position, it's white to move. A similar form to the previous few examples. Can you see a way to bring about a double attack? The answer is d5, threatening the knight, and once the knight moves to its only safe square, d6, forking both of the knights. Once one of them moves, we capture the other one. In this position, it is black to move, and this is one of those examples where we're going to institute a double attack that's based upon a pin. This is a very tricky position. It's very difficult to see at first, but hopefully once you see it and once you practice it, you will start having these ideas absorbed deeply into your mind, and you'll see similar ideas in your own games. The double attack, as I've mentioned, relies on a pin, and the pin is the pin against this pawn here, provided by our bishop on e4. Because of this pin, this pawn actually does not defend the h3 square at all, which means that if we were to land a rook on d3, we would be threatening both checkmate and the bishop at the same time. And that's exactly what we do. We play rook d3, white, only seeing the threat against the bishop, defends the bishop, but misses out on the bigger picture, which is the threat of checkmate, and the game finishes. The double attack has a lot of power, especially when combined with other weapons like the knight fork or the pin. In this example, it is white to move. Can you see a way that we're going to bring about a double attack? It's a very, very difficult scenario to envision. But think about violent moves, captures, checks, or threats thereof, and that will help for accurate calculation. The correct answer starts with knight takes bishop, check. Now, of course, black does not want to recapture with the queen, because then we would recapture the queen with our bishop. So therefore, he captures with the pawn. But this opens up the g file, and that allows us to play queen g4 check, forcing the king to h8. Now, we can play queen h4. Now we have the queen and the bishop both attacking this pawn, and we are threatening a double attack. We're threatening the bishop to come and take the pawn with a double attack on both the king and the queen. That is our major threat. Now, in order to prevent that, black plays king g7, defending this pawn in the only way that he sees possible. How do we proceed from here? Well, from here we have to utilize the power of pins. Remember, this pawn is pinned to the king by our bishop. They're on the same line. Therefore, the defensive ability of this pawn over this square is nothing but an illusion, and we can play queen g5 safely, forcing the king back to h8, and reinforcing not only the threat, but now the actuality of bishop takes f6, check with a double attack against the queen. Black has nothing better to do but take our bishop, at which point we recapture the queen with check, and we raise our rook, preparing for a checkmate attack. Once again, to see this one from the beginning, because it's a bit of a long one, this, again, like all of these combinations, happens with violent moves. We take this bishop, forcing the recapture We give a check, forcing the king away. And now the simple move, queen h4, with not a double attack, but the mere threat of a strong double attack, which practically forces the king to g7, where it's actually not of much use, because due to the pin, we can provide queen g5 check, forcing the king back away, and then landing the double attack. In this example, we are white, and we've just been double attacked ourselves. And just like with pins and forks, you've always got to be careful that your double attack actually works and that there's no secret defenses for your attack. In this example, black has given us a check, and they're also attacking our bishop, much like in a prior example where we did something similar, but we attacked a knight. The bishop, however, has a way to save itself. Can you see how to save the bishop here? The answer is bishop c3, bringing the bishop back to a square where it blocks the check. It's no longer able to be captured by the queen, and we have managed to parry both of the threats. In this example, it is white to move, and this is quite a similar example to what we saw before, in the sense that in that example, black took the knight that was here, and after white recaptured, black then landed this double attack, checking the king and also hitting the rook over here. But if we look at this example, it's white's turn to move. How can white actually maintain a draw in this position? We know that if we take this rook, we're not going to draw, we're going to lose because of the double attack. So what else can we do if not take the rook? How can we save this position? The answer is that we take the bishop. We take the bishop first. Now, black may save their rook, or they may take our rook. If they save their rook, say for example by giving a check, we can also save our own rook by bringing it back. Or if they decide to take our rook, then we can take their rook. In either case, we're holding on for a draw here. So you have to be careful, as always. In this position, it's white to move again. And again, we find ourselves double attacked. This black rook is attacking our queen, and it's also attacking our knight. So black believes that they're in a wonderful position, and we may even believe that too. We may believe we're in trouble here, we've gone wrong, and we've ruined the position somehow. But if you look deeper, you'll actually find there's a way to save both pieces, and you don't have to give up either of them. Can you work out how that's meant to be done? The answer lies in buying time for yourself by moving the queen away with check. Queen b1, check. This forces black to deal with the check, which he does by moving the king. Once the king moves, we can move the knight away, and all of a sudden this rook, which was attacking two pieces at once, is no longer attacking any of our pieces at all. And we've managed to weather that storm. In this example, it is again white to move, and again, we are under a double attack. The pawn on c4 attacks both our queen and our knight. Can you work out a way to save both pieces? Again, the answer lies in a move of violence, a move that forces the hand of our opponent and forces them to take time to reply to what we've done. In this case, the answer is queen takes queen. Because we've taken such a high value piece, black really has to recapture our queen as well. And in the time it takes him to do that, we now have a chance to move our other knight away to safety. In that way, we've saved both of the pieces that were under attack simultaneously. In this position, it's white to move. Can you work out how we can use a double attack to win material? The double attack here comes from the move Queen b4, check, hitting both the king and also hitting the bishop for a second time. After black responds, we can take the bishop and we have won material. In this position, it is white to move. We've seen something similar in the previous examples, but can you see any double attacks here? The move is rook to g5, hitting the knight and hitting the queen. Once the queen moves away, we can take the knight. In this position, it is black to move. This is another kind of a double attacking scenario that we've seen in previous positions. So hopefully it will start absorbing into your mind. Can you see how black can use moves of violence to institute a double attack against white? The answer lies in pushing the pawn to g5, attacking the bishop. And once the bishop moves away, pushing that pawn a step further to g4, where it attacks both the bishop and the knight simultaneously. One of those two pieces will have to give itself up. That's the power of the double attack. In this position, it is white to move. And again, this is a similar position to what we've seen earlier in this chapter. We are deliberately using repetition here so that the ideas absorb into your brain. Can you see a double attacking move here? A move of violence that will force black to have to deal with one threat and give up on the other one? The answer is Queen e4. On the one hand, attacking the bishop on d4 for a second time and threatening to capture it, and on the more important hand, threatening checkmate at h7. Black has to deal with the checkmate threat, so they play g6, thereby allowing us to take the bishop on d4. We then have a queen trade, which is inconsequential. White has a winning position here. That concludes the chapter on double attacks. Come back next time and we're going to be looking at the discovered attack.